Alright guys, I'm the NFL Addict, and today I will be making my NFL record prediction for the 2021 Dallas Cowboys. Now before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe because I do these type of videos all year long. So if you like NFL content here on YouTube, then this is the channel for you. Alright, now let's go ahead and get started talking about the Cowboys. The Cowboys really, they didn't do much to help their biggest issue this offseason, which was their offensive line. I mean, you saw last year, Ezekiel Elliott, he basically did nothing all last season, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that they did not really have an offensive line. And yeah, there were injuries, but even without injuries, they were still doing terribly. And Amari Cooper wasn't doing all that great. I mean, their whole offense kind of didn't. They had an off year last year, and I mean, even with Dak Prescott, whenever they had Dak Prescott in the beginning of the season, they still weren't playing very well. So re-signing him, it's going to help. It's definitely a big step up from Ben DiNucci, who was their second in line after Andy Dalton left. He's not going to fix everything. You can't ignore the little first part of last season when their offense was pretty bad and they were losing most of their games. And, he wasn't playing all that great. So I don't think that he's going to save their offense. However, their defense, they've had a pretty solid front seven the past couple of years. And this offseason, they focus a lot of their power on that defense, mainly that secondary. And I feel like they went from having basically no defense to having a pretty solid defense in this league. I don't think it's spectacular. I don't think it's absolutely amazing. But I do think that it's a pretty good defense. All right, now let's go ahead and get started. So in week one, it's the league opener. It's a season opener. It's an away game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Super Bowl champions from last year, the reigning champions of this whole league. I'm sorry, they have almost a perfect team. There's no chance that Dallas is going to beat them. Then in week two, they have an away game against the Los Angeles Chargers with a whole new coaching staff, which is what they needed. They needed to get Anthony Lynn and his whole group out of there, and they did, and they replaced them. And I think that's going to be a huge help. Now, you look at that offense, you've got the Offensive Rookie of the Year, you've got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. This offense is just so good, and their defense is pretty solid. It's not great, so I think this one is going to be a pretty close one, and it's a pretty good matchup for Dallas, but I like the Chargers offense too much. Now, it's their first divisional game. It's a home game in week 3 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles, they basically got rid of everybody who had a bit of talent except for Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. And Zach Ertz has been saying for the past couple of months now that he wants out of Philadelphia. Really, they're just hoping that they're banking this whole season on Jalen Hurts. They're hoping that he can go out there, win them a couple games with the terrible team that they've got. And I don't know if he can do that because, I mean, he had a couple good games last year, yeah, but towards the end of the season, teams figured him out. And, I mean, you saw he got pulled at the end of the Washington game for a backup who, he's bad. So, yeah, I think he's going to be an all right quarterback. He was, probably below average for, a rookie. So I don't like what Philadelphia is doing, and Dallas is probably going to sweep them right now. I mean, I know they're probably going to end up going 1-16 in my predictions, but this is just rough. I mean, it is terrible. In week 4, Dallas has another home game. 3 home games in a row right here. That's pretty cool. It's against the Carolina Panthers. Got an upgraded quarterback with Sam Darnold. I think that Teddy Bridgewater, he had a really rough season last year. I don't know if that was just an off season for him or what, but I definitely think Sam Darnold will play better than the majority of those games. And they have a lot of young guys on that defense. So this defense is kind of like an unknown because you don't know, it could go really well or it could go really badly. But they've got some great pieces on that defensive line, and they've added some pieces to that secondary. So I like what the Carolina defense is doing. That offense has Christian McCaffrey, who was probably one of the best running backs in the league. It has who's it got? It's got Robbie Anderson, who's a really good deep threat. It's got DJ Moore. They did lose Curtis Samuel, so I do think their offense got a bit worse, but they've had a pretty good offense for the past couple of years, and I think they'll be able to combat this Dallas defense pretty well, and I like Carolina in this game. And then in week 5, it's their second divisional game. It's their 3rd home game in a row. They've really got to get back on track. They're 1-3. Things are going downhill. And in week 5, it's a home game against the New York Giants, who have a really good defense. It showed up late last season against the Seahawks and other teams. They looked really, really stellar out there on defense. And adding Kenny Golladay and Kyle Rudolph does not hurt at all. So I like what the Giants are doing. I think that definitely this division is probably going to be up between the Giants, Washington, and if Dak Prescott can go out there and play pretty well, I think Dallas might be in that conversation too, but it's an iffy one. I'm going to have the Giants win this one. I would not be surprised if Dallas ends up getting swept. In week 6, they have an away game against the brand new New England Patriots, who added so many pieces to that offense. They probably have the best tight end duo in the league with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, 2 of the best tight ends, or 2 top 10 tight ends on the same team. Is going to be, a lot of people are underrating them, just because they had a rough year last year. But I'm going to give the Patriots a win here. So they enter their bye week at 1-5. which is not looking very good. I mean, they're probably, already, you can probably already tell that they're not going to do much in their division. So the Cowboys are in for a rough year after the bye week. But who knows? Maybe they can turn things around. But then you look at the end of this year, they definitely have some tough games. But in Week 8, they have an away game against the Minnesota Vikings, who I think are getting a bit underrated. They have a really rough year last year, and you can't ignore that. But I think, I think that their offense is still pretty good, and they have some pieces on that defensive line, and especially they added 2 stellar cornerbacks to the secondary. I like what Minnesota's doing. Minnesota's going to get the win here. Dallas will not be able to recreate the magic they had last year, and probably one of their best games was last year whenever they played against Minnesota after Dak Prescott left. And then in Week 9, they have a home game against the Denver Broncos, who really have nobody on that offense. They lost Philip Lindsay, who was by far their biggest weapon on offense. And their defense, they did add Kyle Fuller, they did re-sign Justin Simmons, so that defense is still really good. But I don't know if they'll be good enough to stop this Dallas offense. So Dallas is going to get the win here. Their second win of the season as they bump up to 2-6. Still probably in there for the playoffs, but it's going to be a long shot. And then in Week 10, they have a home game against the Atlanta Falcons, who really should have gone for Justin Fields. But, just looking at this season, Kyle Pitts is going to be a pretty good help to them when you look at things. Losing Julio Jones definitely completely demolished their offense, but Kyle Pitts, maybe he can go out there. I don't think he can come anywhere close to Julio Jones, though. Dallas is going to get this win. 2 straight wins in a row. They're on a win streak, and this is what they needed before going up against probably the best team in the league in the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sorry, but they're not going to win this one as they drop down to 3-7, and things are probably getting pretty desperate as they go into their Week 12 game. It's a homer against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders just haven't been good for the past couple of years, and I'm going to give Dallas the win here. It's a pretty close one, but Dallas is going to get the win. So now they're back at 4-7, which is a lot better, in my opinion, in my eyes, than 1-6. So they've gone from 1-6, then they go 3-1. Things are getting hot. All the Dallas fans are out here saying, "Oh, Super Bowl bound." And then in Week 13, they have an away game against New Orleans Saints, who, again, I think are getting kind of underrated. There's a lot of teams I say this about, but they still have Michael Thomas, they still have Alvin Kamara, they still have a really good defense that they even added to. After they fixed their cap, they signed a lot of guys on that defense, and Jameis Winston, after a year sitting behind Drew Brees, and after a year of getting his decision-making figured out, I think that New Orleans will get the win here. Now they have a tough division. End of the season, it's just almost all divisional games, except for that one tough game against the Arizona Cardinals. But in Week 14, it's an away game against the Washington football team, who has probably one of the best defenses in the league. I think it's a top 3 defense. Wouldn't say it's the best, but it's up there. And, really, there's almost no holes. There's a couple bad spots on the linebacker unit, but that's really the only reason they're not the best. And you look at that offense, though, and that's kind of where this team's weaknesses come into, the front. That offensive line hasn't been that great. However, Antonio Gibson was really good last year, and I feel like that he is going to have a nice career with Washington. If they can get that offensive line figured out, then their rushing game would be one of the best. And then you look at this wide receiver unit. You've got Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, who's a really good, even a rushing threat. Last year when Carolina was struggling with all their problems on offense with Christian McCaffrey being injured and Mike Davis having a rough end of the season, Curtis Samuel went out there and he was rushing. So, yeah, I think Washington has a pretty good offense. Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously is a bit of a rough spot, but I think Washington gets the win here. As now they're well out of the playoffs. They're 4-9, and things are not looking great. In Week 15, they have an away game against the Giants. I'm going to have the Giants sweep them. And in Week 16, this is a tough one, but seeing as how well Dak Prescott seems to play against Washington each and every single year, I'm actually going to have Dallas I'm going to have them split with Washington. I understand. I know I've said in a lot of other videos I think Washington is a lot better than the Giants, but just seeing how well the Cowboys with Dak Prescott, how well he seems to get this Washington defense and how well he seems to be able to just demolish it at every turn, you can't ignore that, and I feel like he's going to get the win here. And then in Week 17, they have a home against Arizona Cardinals, who were just the only reason that they aren't making the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs last year, and that'll be tough for them to make the playoffs this year because the NFC West is probably the best division in football right now. And I think the Cardinals will get the win here. They're definitely one of the better teams in the league, but still, you look at this division, it's too rough to do anything in here. And then, like I already said, they're going to sweep Philadelphia. So, normal scenario, they go 6-11. Now let's do worst case scenario, so, even worse. And then we'll do best case scenario and end off on a good note. So worst case scenario is they lose to Las Vegas, they get swept by Washington, and they split with Philadelphia. Yeah, I can see this with Philadelphia. So absolute worst case scenario, and keep in mind, this is not likely at all. This is absolute worst case scenario with the people that they've got no injuries. is 3-14. And again, do not get mad. I just cannot see a possible scenario where they go 2-15. 3-14 is like the lowest I'm willing to say that it is possible unless injuries happen. All right. I always have to restate that. For the first time in my whole career doing these, I had someone get mad about my worst case scenario, and it is no. 6-11. Get mad about 6-11. Don't get mad at 3-14. Now it's your best case scenario. So best case scenario, all right. They could beat the Chargers, and best case scenario is gonna be pretty good. They could beat Carolina. They could beat the Giants here. They could beat Minnesota. And I could see them beating Arizona. And that is Dak Prescott goes out there. This offensive line, now that it's all healthy, it comes back strong, and they play really, really well. Dak Prescott is not hampered by his injury at all. In fact, he has one of his best seasons yet. He shows that he is still in here. He kind of revives his almost dead career. And their defense, all the young guys that they signed to that secondary, all that, it all works out. Their defense steps it up. And I think, with the weak division that they've got, and the pretty easy schedule, I feel like their absolute best case scenario is 11-6. Wait, 12-5. So yeah, I feel like they might have the biggest range out of any team, which is from 3-14 to 12-5. And if they go 12-5, I mean, look at the schedule they've got. The schedule is giving them a lot of favors. I would still be worried at 12-5 about how well they do in the playoffs. But that is, again, absolute best case scenario. I mean, I understand the potential that this team definitely has, but personally, I can't see it happening. So I'm going to flip all these back to what I honestly think will happen. So a 9-game range, which is massive. Normally it's like like 7 or 8, which I know is one less, but still. And Arizona. And is that? I think that's it. All right. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you're mad at me for making this video, if you think that I'm just a hater and it's America's team, they can't go 6-11, then go watch the Philadelphia video. Let me know in the comments. Just do whatever you need to do, but don't. If you're gonna dislike the video, at least comment like, dude, we have the best passing game in the league. What do you mean? Obviously, we're gonna win the Super Bowl. But yeah. 6-11. If you're mad at me, go watch my Philadelphia Eagles video that I'm posting tomorrow, because that will be one. If you don't like the Eagles, you're gonna like that video. And if you're an Eagles fan, you might not like me after the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I see you in my next one. But if not, then goodbye forever. But if so, then goodbye until then. And thank you so much.